The squeak of sneakers on polished wood was the only sound I wanted to hear. All around us, kids were a blur of motion, laughing as they chased bouncing basketballs in wide, joyful circles. I sat on the hard bleachers with my 8-year-old son, Ethan, carefully tying the laces of his new shoes. He wasn't the quickest kid on the court. He wasn't the tallest or the strongest, but his heart was bigger than the whole gym, and he lived for this little Saturday basketball program. But we weren't alone. My family had come, and they hadn't come to cheer. They never came to cheer. My mother stood guard by the entrance, her arms crossed tightly, her lips pulled back in the sneer I knew so well. My dad was beside her, leaning against the wall with a lazy arrogance, his muddy work boots a dark stain on the clean floor. His grin was already wide and cruel, anticipating a show. They were vultures, waiting for something to go wrong, for any tiny mistake they could use to tear us down. Ethan nervously tugged on my sleeve, his small voice a hopeful whisper. "Mom, maybe they'll be nice today." A cold tightness squeezed my chest. I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes, which were locked on the two figures by the door. "Don't you worry about them, sweetheart. You just go play." But he never even got the chance. The coach's whistle cut sharply through the air, a signal for the kids to line up. Ethan hesitated for just a second, a flicker of anxiety in his eyes, his hoodie still pulled up over his head. That single, tiny pause was the only invitation my mother needed. She moved like a predator, her heels clacking like gunshots on the wooden floor as she stormed across the gym. Her voice, sharp and loud, sliced through the happy chatter of the other families. "If you're too stupid to walk, then I'll walk you." Before I could even get to my feet, her hand shot out. She didn't grab his arm. She grabbed the hood of his sweatshirt and yanked with all her strength. Ethan's small body was jolted backward. His sneakers made a horrible scraping sound as they slid helplessly against the floor, unable to find any grip. She was dragging him, dragging my son across the gym floor like he was a sack of garbage. The sound of the fabric stretching, the scrape of his shoes, the sudden, shocked silence, it all drilled into my head like nails. "Mom!" I screamed, leaping from the bleachers and running toward them. But she didn't stop. She didn't even look at me. Ethan's face was turning a frightening shade of red, his small hands clawing desperately at the hood that was now choking him. My mother's grip only tightened as she sneered down at him. "Dogs need leashes. Isn't that right?" My dad's laugh exploded across the now silent gym, a booming, cruel sound full of pride. Finally, someone handling him right. That's how you keep mutts in line. The gym went completely quiet. Every basketball stopped bouncing. Every parent froze, their faces a mixture of shock and discomfort. Every kid just stared, their eyes wide with confusion and fear. The coach stood motionless, the whistle hanging uselessly from his lips. Everyone watched my son's humiliation, and everyone watched mine. I finally reached them, my hands shaking with rage as I ripped Ethan's hood from her grasp. He collapsed into my arms, gasping and coughing, his hands clutching his throat. I held him as tightly as I could, a fire of shame and pure fury burning through my veins. "You don't touch him," I shrieked, my voice echoing in the rafters. My mother just smirked, dusting off her hands as if she had just finished a dirty chore. "If you can't control your brat, don't expect me to stand by and do nothing. Someone has to discipline him. He's wild, just like his mother." Dad let out another bark of laughter, slapping his knee. "Look at her, hugging him like some wounded puppy. Pathetic." Then I saw her, Brooke, my sister. She had her phone out, not to call for help, not to defend her nephew, but to record the whole thing. Her smile was wide and gleeful, her voice dripping with mockery. "This is gold. People need to see this. The mother who can't even keep her own kid in line." I looked around the gym, desperate for an ally, for just one person to step in, but the other parents just shifted uncomfortably. Some muttered to each other. Others looked away, pretending they hadn't seen a thing. Not one of them moved. Not one voice spoke up. Ethan's small body trembled in my arms. He buried his face deep into my shoulder, his voice muffled and broken. "Why do they hate me? What did I do?" My throat felt like it was closing up, my heart cracking into 1,000 pieces. But I forced my voice to be steady as I whispered back, "You did nothing, sweetheart. You did nothing wrong." And as I stroked his hair, staring over his head at the smug, triumphant faces of my parents, something inside me shifted, something cold and hard settled in my stomach. They thought dragging him across that floor had broken me. They thought humiliating my child in front of a gym full of strangers would keep me small and ashamed forever. But it didn't. It lit a fuse, because nobody humiliates my son and gets to walk away laughing. They wanted to treat him like a dog. Fine. I would make sure they lived to see what it felt like when the leash was wrapped around their own throats. Not a real leash, but the only kind that would ever matter to them. The kind that would rip away their power, shatter their pride, and turn their laughter into horrified silence. And for the first time in a very long time, I stopped shaking, because now I knew exactly how this story was going to end. The rest of the game was a total loss. Ethan refused to play, sitting beside me with his face pale and his hoodie crumpled in his lap. He wouldn't look at anyone, not the other kids, not the coach, not even me. The coach tried gently to coax him back onto the court, but Ethan just shook his head, his small hands gripping mine like they were the only things keeping him from floating away. My mother leaned against the bleachers, smirking, her voice a loud whisper meant for the other parents to hear. See, that's what happens when mutts get spoiled. They lose all their discipline. My dad chuckled, his voice booming across the rows of seats. She's raising him soft. That's why he cries at the first little tug. Pathetic, both of them. All the while, Brooke kept her phone angled perfectly, snapping photo after photo, her whispers a constant stream of cruelty. This will get so many laughs. People love when losers embarrass themselves in public. I wanted to scream. I wanted to march over there, rip that phone from her hand, and smash it into a million pieces on the floor. But I didn't. Not yet. I just kept my arm wrapped around Ethan's shoulders, whispering, "Ignore them. Just breathe. I'm right here with you." But I wasn't ignoring them. I was memorizing every single word, every nasty smirk, every cowardly glance from the parents who stood by and did nothing. When the game finally ended, the other kids ran to their families, who greeted them with high fives and proud smiles. Ethan kept his head down as we walked out of the gym. My dad's cruel laugh followed us all the way to the parking lot, echoing off the cars. "Don't forget the leash next time, Rachel. Dogs run wild without one," my mom added, her voice sharp. "Or maybe just leave him at home. You're making absolute fools of yourselves." As we passed them, Brooke snapped one last photo, the flash bright in the dimming light. "Smile for the camera, furniture family." The words hit me harder than any physical blow, because this wasn't just about me anymore. They had turned their poison on my son, and if I let this go, if I did nothing, they would never, ever stop. That night, Ethan cried himself to sleep. I sat on the edge of his bed in the dark, stroking his hair, my heart aching as I listened to his small voice crack with the question I had been dreading all day. "Mom, am I really a dog to them?" My throat burned with unshed tears. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to be calm and steady. "No, baby, you are not a dog. You are mine, you are strong, and you are kind, and one day, they will regret every single word they ever said." But when I finally left his room and quietly shut the door, I leaned my back against the wall, and the shaking started again. My notebook was waiting on my desk, its pages already filled with years of their scribbled cruelty. Tonight, I added new entries. "Dogs need leashes. She's raising him soft. Don't forget the leash next time." I stared at the hateful words until my vision blurred. Then, I picked up my phone. The photos Brooke had posted were already getting reactions. One showed Ethan stumbling, his face twisted in fear and pain as my mother's fist gripped his hood. The caption read, "Walking the mutt." The comments underneath were even worse. People were laughing. They were calling him names, mocking me for being a weak mother. Dozens of likes, rows of laughing emojis stacked one after another. Something inside me didn't just break, it shattered. I took a screenshot of everything. I saved every comment, every timestamp, every single share. For years, I had quietly endured their abuse. I had collected their insults like emotional scars. But now, they had touched Ethan. They had branded my innocent son with their cruelty, and fed his humiliation to their online audience for entertainment. I would not let that stand. I started a new, hidden folder on my phone. I labeled it Leash. Inside, I dumped every photo, every recording, every cruel message they had ever sent. My phone's storage wasn't for family pictures anymore. It was an arsenal. It was my weapon. Over the next few weeks, the abuse continued, becoming a sick kind of game for them. At a family dinner, my dad would hook his finger in his belt loop and grin cruelly at Ethan. "Want me to tie you down so you don't run off, mutt?" My mom would cackle with laughter. "Maybe we should just get him a kennel. He'd be more comfortable." Brooke kept her phone constantly recording, her voice dripping with a fake sweet glee. "This is going to blow up online. Everyone loves family drama." Each time, Ethan shrank a little smaller, became a little quieter. But each time, my own phone was also recording, secretly collecting more ammunition. If they wanted to play with leashes, I was going to show them what it felt like when that leash tightened. Not around Ethan, but around their own necks. My silence wasn't weakness anymore. It was a rope, and with every passing day, I was pulling it tighter. Soon, they wouldn't be laughing. They'd be choking on every last word. It was the night of the district showcase. This was a much bigger event than the Saturday program, held in the main high school gym. The bleachers groaned under the weight of dozens of families, coaches, and even school board members. The air buzzed with nervous excitement. And of course, my family was there, front and center. They weren't there to support Ethan. They were there to perform their favorite roles as the hecklers in their own bloodlines. Story. Dad was slouched in the front row, his arms spread wide over the seats next to him, as if he were a king surveying his peasants. Mom sat beside him, that familiar smirk plastered on her face as she whispered to the church ladies she had brought along. And Brooke, as always, had her phone held high, ready to capture another round of our humiliation for her followers. Ethan sat beside me, his head down, his hood pulled so tight I could barely see his face. His hands trembled on his knees. I leaned down and whispered in his ear, "You don't have to be afraid anymore. Tonight is different." He blinked up at me, his eyes wide with confusion. I just gave his hand a reassuring squeeze. The first whistle blew. The kids took the floor. Ethan hesitated for a moment, and right on cue, my mother shot to her feet. Her voice, sharp as a knife, sliced through the excited chatter. "Go on, Mutt. Show them how a dog runs when it's off its leash." A few people in her little circle laughed. My dad barked out, "Don't trip over your own tail." Brooke cackled, her phone aimed steady. "This is going viral for sure." But just as she said it, the gym's powerful speakers crackled to life. And it wasn't the announcer's voice that came booming out. It was theirs. Loud, clear, and full of unmistakable venom. Their own words echoed through every corner of the massive gym. "Dogs need leashes. She's raising him soft. Walking. The mutt. Let the gutter sort you out." The crowd froze. Parents stiffened in their seats. Coaches on the floor turned around, their expressions turning from confusion to disgust. The kids stopped mid-dribble, and basketballs rolled silently across the polished wood. My mother's smile collapsed. My dad sat bolt upright, his face turning a shade of red that clashed with the bleachers. Brooke lowered her phone as if it had suddenly become red hot and burned her hand. The audio kept playing, clip after brutal clip I had saved over the weeks. Their laughter, their cruelty, their relentless mockery of an 8-year-old boy. Each sentence as sharp and clear as glass. Undeniable. Gasps rippled through the stunned crowd. A mother in the row ahead of us pulled her own son closer, glaring at my parents with pure contempt. A coach muttered loud enough for everyone to hear, "That's disgusting." One of my dad's old coworkers, sitting a few rows back, shook his head and whispered to his wife, "And they brag about being such good Christians." My mother finally found her voice, scrambling to her feet and shrieking, "Turn that off. That's private." I stood up then, my own voice calm but so loud it cut through the chaos. "No. This is who you are. You called my son a dog. You dragged him across this very floor. You laughed while he cried. And now, everyone gets to hear the truth." The speakers blasted one last, final line, my dad's booming, proud laugh. "That's how you keep mutts in line." The silence that followed was 1,000 times worse than any scream. Every single person in that gym was staring at them, not with awe or amusement anymore, but with cold, hard disgust. My mother's church friends were scrambling for the exits, muttering excuses under their breath. My dad's face twitched, his fists clenching and unclenching at his sides, but he didn't move an inch, not with the steely eyes of the school board members locked directly on him. Brooke's friends were whispering furiously at her, one of them hissing, "You filmed that. You actually posted that." For the first time, Ethan wasn't the one shrinking. He slowly lifted his head, and his small, clear voice carried through the quiet gym. "I'm not a dog." Every eye swung from my parents to my son. And in that one perfect moment, I knew my revenge was complete. They had tried to brand him with their humiliation, and now, they were the ones wearing it. It was branded on them in public, their own cruelty echoing from speakers they couldn't control. I put my arm around Ethan's shoulders and calmly walked us out of the gym. Behind us, the voices began to rise. Parents confronting them, coaches demanding answers, whispers spreading like wildfire. They had wanted to put my son on a leash, but tonight, it was them who were chained by their own words, their own laughter, and their own spectacular downfall. And for the first time in years, the sound of their cruelty didn't haunt me. It silenced them. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this.